I think what originally motivated me to do something in STEM was sort of related to a different field actually, or like a different area in like the humanities. So like related to linguistics and stuff like that. So basically, what I was doing, I was volunteering with a lot of, refugee and immigrant kids, sort of like locally near me. And at the time, I was already interested in math and science. It was just like sort of from a young age, I was just interested in volunteering and like interested in math and science like in school. So I kind of taught kids about math and science through the program. And but the problem is I realized that the main need for these kids was not really to learn STEM, it was more to learn like English. So that's sort of when I got more interested in coding and more interested in computer science because I wanted to look into like machine translation and things like that that could help the students I was volunteering with.
So you mentioned that you're really into linguistics, but is there like, do you want to talk about what you consider to be the most exciting or promising area of STEM research or development right now and like why it's so interesting to you?
Yeah, I think, yeah, I guess even the area that is I'm interested in STEM is sort of related to linguistics in the field of like natural language processing. So it's sort of the intersection of like language and like computer science. So kind of thinking about things like ChatGPT, like these kind of generative models. I think that field has been really interesting. I know it's gained a lot of traction recently, but I've been working in this related field for the past year now, and I'm really excited to see all of the so much like attention going towards this field, and I feel like it's really revolutionary as people are using it to for many different purposes, not just one singular purpose per se. So I think it's very diverse and there's a lot of different uses for it. So I'm just really excited to see like how it will be improved in the future and how that will expand.
Yeah, that must be really cool though, because like everyone else, it seems like, because like I just like figured out what a large language model is or something.
Yeah.
It
Right.
must be so cool because like you've been working on this for such a long time now. You have like additional insight. So that's
Mhm.
really cool.
Yeah, it was really exciting because when I initially went into the field of NLP, it was like relatively unknown. Like I knew there were things like GPT and I experimented with that before, like the whole release of all this stuff. But I never realized like it would explode like this. And now like a lot of people are really interested, which I think is really wonderful.
Can you share a woman in history who has really inspired you and tell us a little bit about her?
I think maybe one example of a woman in history is probably someone named Emily Bender. She works with the University of Washington, so sort of near where I live, and she's like a leading figure in computational linguistics, NLP, and she's like worked a lot with like I think more recently like the ethics of like language models and things like that, as a lot of things come up with like, hey, should this content be generated? How can we reduce biases in like this content because a lot of the AI and machine learning stuff that is generated comes from data that could be biased. So she really works in that area. And just her longstanding like commitment to working in these areas, I think she's done a lot of like research into environmental pollution that comes from like the computer science work that people do, which I think is really not, thought about very often. A lot of times people will just like run some code and, not worry about it, but in the servers, in the back end that really causes all of this environmental issues. I was really excited to hear her speak about that. So yeah, I think she just really sort of aligns with my idea of using coding for social good and seeing the implications of that. Whereas maybe I do it in more of an educational aspect, looking at the other places like the environment, looking at other places like the ethics. I think those are really interesting. So yeah, she really inspires me to do my work in NLP for social good.
Yeah, that's really cool. Like on energy efficiency, I feel like that's definitely something that's not talked about enough in computer science. Like a lot of my experience is in parallel computing. And
Yeah.
something that's recently been getting really, really big is how do we make sure that like when our computers and our processes are running in parallel, how do we like minimize the amount of energy that we use? Because like supercomputer systems, like they have to cycle water in and out constantly to keep the room cool enough. Otherwise, it would completely overheat and all the machines would like stop working. So
Mhm.
it's like a huge thing. It's like how do we make this growth sustainable?
Right, right. That's definitely true. Yeah, I definitely don't know a lot about the field, but I think it's something that needs to like grow in the future, like maybe um some sort of like combination of computer science and environmental engineering and stuff like that to see that. And it's really cool to see your interest in that as well.
Yeah. So how do you think that the representation of women in STEM fields has changed over the past few decades? And what factors have majorly contributed to those changes?
hmm I think probably it's just become a lot more normalized now. I think a lot more women are interested in going into STEM with like all of the female role models. I think probably like 20 years ago, there weren't that many, or like even 20 years ago, I feel like STEM as a field was smaller. I think that the rise of things like iPhones and technology that has come in the last 20 years has been really influential. And it's really good to see them like more representation of women in these fields. I think even from personal experience, like with my nonprofit organization, there's actually like a majority of people applying to be in the UI design, applying to be coders are actually like girls or like, girls or women who are interested in doing this stuff, which I'm really excited to see. It's actually like a majority of people who are applying to these positions are women, which I am really surprised and excited about. And yeah, I think the overall like awareness from like a lot of programs about women in STEM, about the experiences of that, like the groups that are created, like women in data science, like women in computer science, and like what it means to be like that. So I think, yeah, there's definitely a long way to go, but I feel like it's definitely improved since, where it was.
How has your involvement with the National Girls Collaborative Project and the YAB impacted your perspective on gender equity in STEM? And what have been some of the most valuable lessons that you've learned in your time with the organization?
YAB gave me that opportunity to connect with other girls, which was really important because like in my local area, there's not much of that. So I feel like getting that perspective was really important.
If you had a young woman who was interested in pursuing STEM but was unsure where to start or how to overcome any potential obstacles, what advice would you give to her?
I would probably just say start with something that you're passionate about. Start with something like you've seen in your community that is a problem. I mean, that could even be related to your struggles as like a woman in STEM. Like you could start an organization related to that. I think that's where I found the most success is like finding a problem in my local community that has been an issue. And I think that's the way in which you can make the most impact because your local community is something you see and experience every day rather than like national or global problems. They might be very abstract and very big. So I would encourage them to look at local problems and see how they can apply the STEM subjects to that because I think literally every local problem has something to do with STEM. Like you could make a computer science app that helps, or like you could like clean up a dam which is related to like environmental science or something. So I think finding ways in which you can tie in local problems to things that are important to you. And I think yeah, in terms of like barriers with like I guess men and like other problems that occur, I think probably just like to be confident in yourself, to believe in your abilities, take advantage of like the communities and the groups you have, and sort of like try to connect with other like women in STEM through different programs and things like that. So you feel like you're not like alone and isolated in this journey.